This time I'm really going to try to finish this 760 variant 1 Powermaster. Been a long haul since I started on this thing in December. When I ended up being retired, I can't spend too much money per month on this stuff anymore. And had to get more stains and bluing chemicals and all kind of strippers and all kind of things, related things like that, besides seal kits and assembly kits to get minor small parts and junk like that. So in this 8th installment, I'm going to try to get the thing done and then test fire it at the end. I'll get to chronograph test a little later. I got a couple other rifles I got to crank out besides part 2 on the 160, and I got to get that 760D Pumpmaster back together from my brother. I want to get get pictures of all 3 of the 760s together and with the other rifles. So I got some updated pictures, you know, of the collection. And it's just taking a while because I gotta do drilling and machining inside the receiver. Then I gotta put the bolt probe in a drill and have somebody hold that down while I take a 3-corner file and that this tapered diamond dust coated Dremel bit to make a seal groove in the right place, so I can get the breech to seal up when you're ready to fire. Another guy did that, claimed he got another 50 feet per second, so we'll see how well this thing does. I couldn't test it before I took it apart because the seals were already gone from being worn out shooting so much when I was a kid and sitting so long and all of that. So once I finish machining the slots inside the upper BB magazine for those little screw plates that the MOE Picatinny rails need to use to secure them in place, that'll basically hold the rear scope mount. The front one's not a problem. So got to get all that receiver stuff finished before we can take the basically the barrel, pump tube, and this here, the forestock, and the pump assembly and all that all go together in one piece, and then you bolt it into the receiver with the trigger parts and all that stuff. So you basically have to get that put together, and you put the rest of it together. So we'll get to that right now and see if we can finish her up. Okay, right here I'm marking this the place where I need to put the notches on the top of the other side of the receiver. I have to use a drill bit to do that. Diamond bit wasn't very good at it. And use the heavy end of it to make the marks a little heavier so they're easier to see. And an 1/8 inch drill bit with an 1/8 inch shank fit the Dremel real nice, so it's way easier to use. You can cut a few holes so I know where to. It just makes it line up easier and makes it easier to cut into that alloy. And there they are done. And I put that's the screw plates from the Picatinny rails. See how much, mark them for how much I got to cut off. They basically wind up square. So you can put the two halves together, and they can use the screws inside to hold the Picatinny rails on the outside. And here is the first back one I put in and put together to prove that it works. And then I had basically marked them B1 and B2 for back. They have to be cut and fit in a specific spot. And here you can see that it works. That's the slot for the BB magazine there I drilled into. And I marked the bag back too, so that and which one's going. Now this plate here has to go over top of that little rib there next to it. That rib on just that side doesn't line up with one on the other side. It's supposed to be F2, not F1. Got the numbers wrong. And got both of them in there and put the halves together to prove that they fit. And that's going back. That's where I ground that rib down with the Dremel to so that the plate would fit over top of it on that one side, so I could line up the screw holes. F1, F2, and bag them up and tape the bag shut and save them for when we get to that part of the assembly. 3-corner file used on a bolt chucked in a drill here to try to cut a little seal groove in it. Didn't work out real well, so I had to blip the trigger as I cut the slot a little bit each time as I turned it around. The thing wouldn't focus this time real close. It usually focuses pretty good when you get up close, but not now. That slot there is not as deep as it looks. And I put the seal on I thought was small enough, and no, it ain't even close to going that bore. Not even a little bit. So I broke out the RTV, which was solidified the top ½ inch, and it broke through on the side. And so I used a Q-tip to smear a little bit on there. It doesn't need much. The 761 XL barrel fits that bolt a lot tighter than the old one did, the old smooth bore. I got a bag of a dozen stainless steel wire wheels for the Dremel, polished the bolt up. Had a lot of ground-in, dirty corrosion stuff on there. Shined up real nice. And here I used Neverdull to clean out the dirty stuff out of the pores of the metal and wipe it off with a cleaning patch. And as you can see, it's a lot brighter. That looks worlds better. And I tried to clean the trigger with it inside the trigger guard. That didn't work, so I just took it apart and used the wire wheel to kind of clean it up. Want to use some that paint they used to use for model airplanes and stuff. Once the paint dries, you can buff it. It'll polish like metal. Find some gold or brass that'll work on there. I put it back in for now. It's real simple. And here we have the hammer piston, hammer spring, and the cocking piston, which is stationary. I cleaned it up and started polishing them with some with a green Scotch-Brite pad, just to clean them up and smooth them out a little bit. And there's the threaded sleeve that goes through that hole right there. And screws on both sides of the receiver go into both sides of that threaded sleeve to hold the cocking piston stationary. And the cotton balls after cleaning the inside of the pump tube to make sure it's all clean and slicked up and ready to go. Can't leave that dirt in there from bluing and the other chemicals and all that junk. And here's the valve all cleaned up, new seals and a new little piston stop thingy that goes inside the plastic part. And there's the metal port gasket I told you about. It's not plastic on this one, it's actually a machined piece of metal. So that works real well. I had to tape it in place to hold that part stationary while I tried to get the rest of the piston to line up at this hole here, 90 degrees to the left, around the side of the pump. And you line up at that hole in the front there where the roll pin goes, and you keep it that way when you push it straight back to the hole near the back there, 90 degrees around from where the gasket goes, and it'll line up. And it did. There it is, lined up where it's supposed to be. And the gasket there on top, I took the tape off. And that little thing that tit on the end of the hammer piston goes in first, and the spring goes in the hole in the end. Stick the cocking
piston in and push the sleeve through. You hold it in with your thumb against the pressure of the hammer spring, which ain't much. And I put a screw in there just to hold through the tube into the front of that piston to hold it, I mean the valve to hold it in place. I had to take that latex out of there too, and scrape the glue and everything out so the forearm would seal.
Okay, once you got this thing hammered into place, because this barrel band has tangs in it that go back in here, and a double forked thing is the arm on the front of this one with a bushing going through there, so you can get it all in there. And I started that 2mm Allen screw there, so I could slide the barrel through it. Let me see if I can hold this back here, and the port gasket there isn't refrigerator tubing. That's actually a machined piece of steel. The steel, it works really nice on this one. So you start this one and then leave it loose, so you can get, oops, that breech screw down in there, which holds these two together properly. And where that gasket is, that's the gas port from the valve. And this one with the little threaded sleeve that goes through it right there. You have to push in with your thumb. That's the cocking piston, but it's stationary on this one. And the hammer spring is here, and the hammer piston is over here against the tail end of the gas valve, where that sleeve is that this metal seal sits in. So that all has to go together just right. And when you go to put the barrel back in the receiver housing, you got to stick the bolt through here and get it up in there. I got sitting over there with some RTV cured on it. And you got to basically leave the rear side off to slide it through there. Then you put it back on, and you have to put it back on because these screws go all the way into the barrel bore. Oh, they're flush and everything, you know, don't worry about that. But yeah, you gotta put that on. You can't cheat with that one. And as I said, I had to take all this off and use my X-Acto knife and that little screwdriver over here to scrape all the hot glue out of here, because this thing wouldn't seat. So you'd have to inlet the forestock more in order to use any kind of stuff like that as a sound deadener. You have to account for the thickness.
And here we have the barrel, pump tube, pump assembly, and all that put back together. You got to put that together first, where you can put it in a receiver, and looking really good. And here I used my parts cleaning brush I usually use on a keyboard to brush all that. It's like metal filings in there. Now this is a BB detent. And the spring for that detent is missing in action. That seats right there where I'm pointing in that little cup right there. And pushes the BB detent into that little hole, the port I'm pointing at right there. When you pull the bolt back, the BBs don't fly out. And here I'm putting all little switches and stuff like that back in position. And I was going to use that thing, a barrel, or well, thing goes between the barrel and the pump tube, and to put these Picatinny rails on the holes in the slots I made. I even had to hot glue it right there to put the end piece back together for the front one. And got the screws in there and all. That's like a 3.5mm Allen wrench that fits it. And basically here, they're installed here without those barrel sleeve things. It actually wouldn't fit real well with them things on there. And it leveled out amazingly well by themselves. Now that front one's hanging back a little bit over the breech opening because of all those strengthening rib things inside. Here's what it looked like originally when I found it. And then at 7:10 last night when I finally got it all back together. And this morning after I cleaned the bore and wiped it down with oil and all of that. Looking really nice. That's just beautiful. And here's the patches. The round Brownell 7/8 diameter patches work, but those square ones, there's only 4 out of about a couple dozen that worked. Here's them from wiping down the rod between rounds, and here's a couple dozen patches that pushed off the jag and slid down the rod. They won't go down the barrel at all. Allen and outers won't work. A couple more here from wiping down the outside, one wet, one dry. And the 30 weight silicone oil here that I used in the bolt slide slot with these Q-tips. One was wet and one was dry.
Morning. Kappa Squad, we'll finish this up. At 7:10 last night, I finally got the 760 Variant 1 Powermaster all put back together and mounted the scope and everything. And as you saw, those little barrel separator things for the 160 that separates the barrel from the gas tube, I had underneath the Picatinny rails. Didn't work out. Couldn't get enough length left on the screws to get enough draft between the bottom of the Picatinny rails and where the two halves of the receiver go together to physically do so. So they actually came out very level all by themselves. You don't need to put something under there to match the curve of the top of the receiver on these Powermasters. I still think it was a little short-sighted that they didn't mold the dovetail rail into the top of the receiver on Variant 1 like they did. The variations after that, the Variant 4 anyway, that Donnie gave me, has the dovetail rails molded in. Anyway, I cleaned the barrel and wiped it down and stuff like that. And there it is. And these flames or tiger stripes, whatever you want to call them, almost disappear or get bolder depending on the angle of view. And they go over top too and underneath, which also happens to match the forestock. Now this is the original finish on the forestock except for one coat of True Oil. Now on this side you can see more of the flames on the forestock. And here is the other side. I'm trying to see if you can see the peekaboo effect here. Ghost painting, peekaboo. I've heard both names. When we used to use pearl flake to do stripes and flames and stuff on cars that you can only see from a certain angle. They get bolder or lighter depending on your angle of view. And as I said, those are MOE AR-15 Picatinny rails that I custom mounted to the top of this one. And you can see that front Picatinny rail hanging over the breech opening a little bit. That's because of those vertical fins, like the ribs to strengthen the structure they put on the inside. They're all over the place, besides the rounded ribs in here and back here for the barrel and the gas tube to keep them aligned and in position and all that, so you can get all these all these screws through the receiver going into it at various points. And Simmons 1-inch tube, 4x32 scope. What it looks like without it. It's a Plex reticle, what they call a Plex reticle now anyway. It started with the Weaver Dual X scopes. I've got one on the 760 Powermaster Variant 4 from January '77, and it's a 70 scope, so it's period correct for that one. But that's where what they now call a Plex reticle started. That was originally the Weaver Dual X in my V22A to be exact. But it's kind of hard to. Oh, there's the top of the buttstock. Now, unlike the Powermaster Variant 4 that Donnie gave me, the receiver is black on that one, so black Rust-Oleum would look even better. Which, by the way, I used on this barrel band and end cap here. I don't know if you can see on the end of the end cap right there. You can see 6-0. I was looking at it like this, upside down. There's a perfect scratch through the middle of the 0. Made it look like a 8 that just wasn't stamped real hard, you know. And here it turns out, you got to look at it right side up like that, and that's 6-0 for June 1970. So I got it when I was 14, not 13. Not bad. And I also polished the bolt probe and everything with a stainless steel wire wheel and a Dremel, and then some Never Dull after that. And I had put some I filed a little groove around there behind the part of the bolt probe where the magnet is. It's machined kind of like a stepped taper, so it comes up to the final diameter you can see like right here. And took a Q-tip and some black RTV, made a real thin little hump right there and let it cure. I went to put it in here, and then you lay the barrel in there and push it into the end of the barrel while you're putting it together here. That's the only way you can do it. And that shows how tight this new old stock 761 barrel is. The 768 XL and the 761 XL are deluxe barrels with rifling, but they've also got tighter tolerances. I went to use the 7/8 inch square patches from Allen and Outers in this thing, totally worthless. I went through a couple of dozen. I've only got 4 to go down to bore. The Bushnell's round 7/8 it likes. It'll take those with the 7/8 inch of 177 caliber spear tip jag to get it clean, as you saw. Sorry, stupid phone. Editing the video. So anyhow, let's pump it up and see what happens. Hold it like right here rather than down here, so you won't loosen the stock when you go to pump it. Oh, hold on there. There was one pump anyway, so I'm going to pump at 9. I have to remember that. Oops. I always forget to open the darn tin. Oh, I'm sorry. H&N Sniper Light, 177 cal, 7.5 grain. These are the ones the 760D in the bag underneath the camera here likes. Cut a star in the bullseye at 10 yards with that one, and it's got a barrel that's about 1.5 inches shorter than this one, but it is rifle. See you. Let's just see what she does. 177 is really small. That's hard for me to work with. Oh, and I did clean out in here to get the metal dust and junk out with a Q-tip, a couple Q-tips, and 30 weight silicone oil. One Q-tip wet to clean it all out down in here and around there and everything. Work it back and forth a couple times to get a light coating on the bolt shaft, or probe as they call it, and then use a dry Q-tip to clean that out. And oops. Got everything. It worked. I shot one yesterday. Now it won't do it. Okay. It leaked out. Maybe I should put the pellet in first and then pump it. It's leaking already. That plastic piston might have burned through just like that other guy's. Other guy said his did. Okay, let's just test my theory here. Pellet in first. Either that or the lubricant need to work back and forth again that I put in last night and hadn't pumped again. That could be. Yep, that was it. All right. See, there's a V-spring like that on the body of this trigger where it comes up and the little thing like a beak is sticking down like that. And one part of the spring sits in little grooves in here where this is, so that it's either on or off. The spring tension changes. So there's definitely had to get that lubricant worked in there so it'll hold gas. That's all that was. Without the lubricant, it don't hold. But the bolt fits the barrel. This 761 XL rifle barrel a lot tighter. It was actually sloppy. You could flop it around in the old smoothbore. And this one here, it's snug, and there's maybe a thousandth or so of play, just a wee teeny bit you almost can't feel. And I can tell that it's a little bit louder at 10 pumps. Next time I get to it, I got another couple of rifles I got to go through here. The 760D Pumpmaster, then the one changed the valve on the 160 Pel gun to the Archer XP tuned valve for the QB78. It's supposed to be worth another 70 feet per second, so we'll test that and we'll find out. And the 160 pellet test part 2. But that's it for this one for now. It's basically done and looking really pretty. That came out really nice. With the tiger stripes and these wavy lines. Some of them are sanding scratches from the 100 grit that blends into these wavy lines that almost look like remind me of the cloud bands on Jupiter. It kind of reminds me of that. Underneath the tiger stripes or flames or whatever you call them, you know, they're like watermarks over top of the regular grain, which looks like maple grain to me, because I've never seen beechwood have tiger stripes on it. I don't know. And it's not walnut because it's a light colored wood. I stained it with Minwax oil stain number 224 special walnut. And then that's 2 coats of true oil on the buttstock, 1 coat on the forestock, and the forestock is the original stain. That was perfect. I just wanted to match the buttstock to the forestock a little better, as you saw in the before and after. So, that's it for this one. Good Lord willing, the creeks don't rise. We'll see you again.